I am feeling like I'm in a time capsule, and I'm caught between past, present, and the unknown future. And here we are in a reunion, our first in 14 years. And so I'm in a time capsule also because I come from the West Coast now, the left coast, and find myself with my old buddies, and we are durable goods. Of that we can be sure. And I certainly recognized in all those names that Stephen brought up, and I'd like to add also Roy Kiuka was an important mentor to me, Daphne Marlett, and Matthew Van Beyer. So I'm going to stick pretty much to new poetry, just because that's what I really want to share with you. And I'm a book person, as everyone here is. We're the bouquiniste, and we're lovers of book. And I live very close to the University of Oregon. They also have a rare book room, and many poetry readings have taken place there, including Nicole Grossard came not too long ago and read in translation. So I wanted to start with an excerpt from a longer poem, which is called Transience, and it's based on a videotape made by a Chinese artist who was born during the Cultural Revolution and whose father worked had a library of books which was totally destroyed during that, in the days before Tiananmen Square. So he made a video of books tumbling in space, and the old texts that were not allowed by Mao, all of the old scholarly works, and I wanted to read an excerpt from that for you.
Up, please. Speak a little louder.
Oh, certainly. Is this better?
To the mic. That's good.
Okay, we got it. All right. So his name is Zhao Zejie. He's a great painter. Watching transience. To soft tones of a plucked instrument, loose pages from books drift and float in black space. Rescued from musty stacks of old Chinese libraries, once bound by threads, now torn apart, they free fall, fluid as silk, crumpled as leaves in autumn, transparencies carried by unseen winds into emptiness. Paper sleeves and skirts bearing only traces of language, weathered graffiti, undulating to strum of vintage lute. Uncovered, unmoored, and swept beyond context of companion pages, what do they have to tell us? And we can certainly ask that of the books here in the rare book room. This poem appeared in Mouse Eggs, of which you can get a copy, and I think that Endre did a great job. And Endre, and I guess it was also Tom, who put that together and made it a facsimile of the old Mouse Eggs mimeographed article. And so this poem is called Shavasana. Those of you who do yoga know what that is. It's the corpse pose, which we all await eagerly after our yoga sessions. And this was written in honor of my mother, Gertrude, and I wrote it from a journal entry, and I wasn't able to write it until long after she passed. No expiration date for the way deep knowing drops into yoga class, without warning or fanfare. Memory of my mother's youthful body before her last goodbye at 61. Her tight mind, the heavy weight that took her down. Now a spirit presence, witnessing her daughter stretched out in a room of soft-breathing women. Now, some of you knew Matthew Van Beyer, and he was a fine teacher at John Abbott. John Abbott is where many of us met, and Endre was there, and Peter Van Torn, and I have really wonderful memories of the students there, even though they were not really ready for my literature classes. I had them reading Middle English and Zorba the Greek, and it was a challenge. But this isn't about that. It was written for Matthew, who passed away in 2006, and he was a journal keeper too, and he and I are journal fanatics, and we have fat books filled with all sorts of mementos. But that's just a little background. And he also made a recording called Metropolis with the Montreal composer Dave Gossage, and it's a very beautiful, he had a voice that's unforgettable. You did not stray. You did not stray from your inevitable life, even when you knew you might not last the year, red blood cell count way down. You did not lose your humor when, bald and blanched, trousers loose, you climbed wrought iron stairs to the Esplanade apartment where your daughter and Gus the cat awaited your return from chemo. The ivy port in your belly did not eclipse your appetite for grilled cheddar and chocolate cake, your first home meal in weeks. Gaunt, you devoured the mail, feasted on favorite lines by Jack Gilbert, Neruda, and love poems of Vietnam. And though you rightly called your illness ugly, its rude affronts did not dim your gratitude for the Saudi doctor and French-Canadian nurse at the Jewish General, proof of the way things should be. Your friends held hope for recovery or remission, unable to imagine the man with kazoo who celebrated April Fools as his true birthday, and that he could be brought down like this. A month later, you were gone, but for your voice, peerless on the answering machine, reciting lines by Polish poet Anna Swier. More clearly than ever, I am in the company of my own person. Now, he was a good friend of the Eastern Townships poet Avram Malice. All these interconnections. So I'd like to read a poem that I had written for Artie, and it's a dream poem, and it appears in my book Colgate, and I want to quote Artie for a minute. He said, "Poetry is a listening art," and he and I were so bound by our love of all kinds of music, from Rachmaninoff to blues. And so, he called himself Blind Baby Grunt. That was one of his monikers. Anyway, this is a dream for Artie. Rock flute. We labored again and again to roll away the smooth black rock, blocking free passage of our voices through a row of lustrous stones lined up in long grass. Facing each other at opposite ends, we were kids messaging through a corridor of shiny black rocks. Crazy! We just knew those rocks were a throat through which we could pass, oh, what sounds. We pried until the blockage was gone and music, long and liquid, was freed from crystalline form. Why, we laughed to hear such brook music purl and pour from the throat of black rocks. And I wanted to read this because he really liked that poem and sent me a long letter, typewritten in black and red ink. And you know, he was a real letter writer. We were all letter writers in those days, and we were using typewriters and mimeograph machines, and you know. So, I'd like to end with a song. Let's see if I can remember it now. Heartache ain't nothing to complain about. Since you let it keep right on aching, let eyes keep on seeing one thing. Well, listen now. Heartache ain't no more important than one iris or one texting putting out 10 women heartaches at once and countless people in Toronto. That's a sort of, obviously, for what happened on Monday. I just kind of revised an old poem. So I think my time is up. And no, it isn't. My time is not up, but I think that I'm gonna, no. We may be out of the bubble of youth, but our spirits are bright, and our minds, though full of chaos, are also working on clarifying our connection with the spirit. Woo-hoo. So, anyway, thank you.
God, his body,
his body,
his body, his body,
his body,
his body, his body,
his body,
his body is beautiful. His
dark,
velvet, 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 sex, color,
I have
no name for his rising,
his rising,
his rod, ready,
a maenad,
he
shows
me his round drum,
like a female, like a female, like a female.
and in me all sexes.